Hi there, and welcome to the Okie Dokies crochet tutorial for making your very own adorable axolotl. I'm Haley, and I'm so excited to crochet with you today. In this video, we'll go step by step so you can follow along at your own pace. Before we dive in, some of the basic crochet skills or stitches you'll need for this project are a chain, single crochet, increase, decrease, slip stitch, sewing, stuffing, and using safety eyes. Let's take a look at everything included in your kit to make your cute little axolotl. If you're using the Okie Dokies kit, you should have a hook, a yarn needle, some stitch markers, some safety eyes, the yarn, and of course some stuffing. Now, quick note before we get started, don't hesitate to pause or rewind anytime. You've got this. All right, let's get started. Grab your yarn and hook, and we'll begin with creating a magic ring alternative. All right, for round number 1 of the axolotl head and body, go ahead and create a magic ring alternative by crossing the yarn over your 2 fingers, putting your yarn underneath the first loop, grab your yarn, pull up a loop, grab the yarn again, and pull up another loop. Now using your finger to hold this yarn in place, gently pull on the yarn tail to tighten up that knot. Then go ahead and chain 1. And then in that second chain from the hook, you're going to put 12 single crochets. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. All right, go ahead and grab your stitch marker. We're going to place it on there. All right, round number 2, we're going to be doing a single crochet and then an increase, and we're going to repeat that 6 times around. So single crochet, and remember an increase is just 2 single crochets in the same stitch. So increase number 1, single crochet, increase number 2, single crochet, increase number 3, single crochet, increase number 4, single crochet, increase number 5, single crochet, increase number 6. All right, go ahead and move that stitch marker up. All right, for round 3, we're going to be doing 2 single crochets and an increase, and we're going to repeat that 6 times. So 1, 2, increase, oops, 1, 2, increase, 1, 2, increase, 1, 2, increase, 1, 2, increase, 1, 2, increase. All right, move that stitch marker up. All right, round number 4, we're going to be doing 3 single crochets and an increase, and we're going to repeat that 6 times. 1, 2, 3, increase, maybe, 1, 2, 3, increase, 1, 2, 3, increase, 1, 2, 3, increase, 1, 2, 3, increase, 1, 2, 3, increase. All right, move that stitch marker up. Round 5 is going to be 4 single crochets and an increase, and we're going to repeat that 6 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, increase, 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 1, 2, 3, 4, increase. All right, move that stitch marker up. Round number 6, we're going to do 5 single crochets and an increase. We're going to repeat that 6 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, increase, 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 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, increase. Move the stitch marker up. All right, round number 7, we're going to do 6 single crochets and an increase. We're going to repeat that 6 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, increase, 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 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, increase. Move that stitch marker up. All right, now for rounds 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13, we're just going to be single crocheting all the way around. So you should have 48 single crochets on each round. So round 8, 48 single crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, and 48. All right, go ahead and move that stitch marker up. Round 9, 48 single crochets again. All right, move that stitch marker up. Round number 10, same thing, single crochet all the way around for a total of 48 stitches. Move the stitch marker up. All right, round 11, we're going to do the same thing, 48 single crochets around. All right, move the stitch marker up. All right, round 12, 48 single crochets around. All right, move the stitch marker up. All right, round 13, we're going to be single crocheting 48 around again. All right, move the stitch marker up. Round 14, we're going to be doing 6 single crochets and a decrease, and we're going to do that 6 times around. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm going to be doing an invisible decrease for my decreases, but if you don't want to do an invisible decrease, you can do whatever kind of decrease you want. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, decrease, 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 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, decrease. All right, move the stitch marker up. Round 15 is going to be 5 single crochets and a decrease, and we're going to repeat that 16 times around. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, decrease, 1, 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 2, 3, 4, 5, decrease. All right, move the stitch marker up. All right, for round 16, we're going to be doing 4 single crochets and a decrease, and we're going to repeat that 6 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, decrease, 1, 2, 3, 4, decrease, 1, 2, 3, 4, decrease, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, decrease, 1, 2, 3, 4, decrease. All right. Move the stitch marker up. Round 17, we're going to be doing 3 single crochets and a decrease, and we're going to repeat that 6 times. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, decrease, 1, 2, 3, decrease, 1, 2, 3, decrease, 1, 2, 3, decrease, 1, 2, 3, decrease. All right, move the stitch marker up. All right, at this point we're going to place our safety eyes and stuff the head of our axolotl. So grab your safety eyes, and we're going to place them between rounds 10 and 11. So count to 10 and 11. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm actually going to place mine between 9 and 10. I think I like that placement a little bit better. But you can place them wherever you want, wherever you feel looks good. All right, and then place them so you have about 6 or 7 stitches showing in between. Once you like the placement, go ahead and add the backs to them so that they stay secure. All right. Grab your stuffing, and we're just gonna start stuffing the head. Whoa. So we're just gonna start kind of slow and just in little chunks add it to the head. And we want to kind of avoid overstuffing, so I'm not gonna stuff it as much as it needs right now, and then we'll add a little bit of stuffing when we're partially done with the body. All right, for round 18, we're gonna do 2 single crochets, a decrease, and then 2 more single crochets, and we're gonna repeat that 4 times. So 1, 2, decrease, 1, 2, 1, 2, decrease, 1, 2, 1, 2, decrease, 1, 2, 1, 2, decrease, 1, 2. All right, move the stitch marker up. All right, round 19, we're going to be doing 20 increases. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. All right, move that stitch marker up. All right, rounds 20 through 26, we're going to be doing 40 single crochets a round. So let's get started. Round 20. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, and 40. All right, move that stitch marker up. All right, round 21, 40 single crochets around again. All right, move the stitch marker up. All right, round 22, same thing, 40 single crochets all the way around. All right, move the stitch marker up. Round 23, 40 single crochets. All right, move the stitch marker up. Round 24, 40 single crochets around. Move the stitch marker up. Round 25, same thing, 40 single crochets around. All right, move the stitch marker up. Round 26, our last time doing 40 single crochets around. All right, move the stitch marker up. Round 27, we're going to do 4 single crochets, a decrease, and then 4 more single crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, decrease, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, decrease, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, decrease, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, decrease, 1, 2, 3, 4. Move the stitch marker up. All right, so round 28, we're going to be doing 2 single crochets, a decrease, and then 2 more single crochets. And we're going to repeat that 6 times. So 1, 2, decrease, 1, 2, 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 1, 2, decrease, 1, 2. All right, move the stitch marker. All right, round 29, we're going to be doing 3 single crochets and a decrease. We're going to repeat that 6 times. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, decrease, 1, 2, 3, decrease, 1, 2, 3, decrease. All right, move that stitch marker. All right, round 30, we're going to be doing 2 single crochets and a decrease. We're going to repeat that 6 times. Before we start round 30 though, I'm going to add a little bit of stuffing to mine just to kind of give it a little form. That way I'm not stuffing it as much in a small hole. All right, round 30. One, 2, decrease. 1, 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 2, decrease. All right, move that stitch marker. And round 31, we're going to do a single crochet and then a decrease. We're going to repeat that 6 times. Single, decrease, single, decrease, single, decrease, single, decrease, single, decrease, single, decrease. All right, take the stitch marker out. If at this point you're not liking how it's stuffed, you can go ahead and add a little bit more in there if you want to, or you can leave it. It doesn't really matter. It's totally up to you. And then we're just going to do 6 single crochets around, or 6 decreases around, sorry, for this round. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, last one, 6. Go ahead and do a slip stitch just to finish it off. Cut your yarn. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and take our yarn needle and we're going to thread it on to the yarn needle. Alright, then we're going to go through the front loops of each of those decreases in that last round. We're just going to pull it through. And it's going to slowly close up the hole. Alright, and then just I like to just thread it through at least like 1 or 2 other spots, just to make sure that that yarn tail's not going anywhere. Go ahead and cut it off. Just gonna cut off that little bit of stuffing that is coming out. Alright, and there you have your adorable axolotl body. Time to move on to the arms, legs, tail, and gills. Alright, we're going to start with the tail, just because we're going to use the same yarn. So we're going to do our magic ring alternative. We're going to do 8 single crochets. In that second chain from hook. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right. Now we're going to do 8 single crochets around. So we're going to start right here. One, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, and 8. All right, at this point your piece should be kind of curving, so make sure you have the right side facing out. Go ahead and add a stitch marker if you need it. All right, round 3, we're going to do 8 single crochets again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Go ahead and move that stitch marker. Round 4, we're going to do 8 single crochets again. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right. Move the stitch marker. All right. Round 5, we're going to do a an increase and then 3 single crochets. We're going to repeat that twice. So increase, one single, 2 single, 3. All right, we're going to increase again. And then 1, 2, 3. All right, go ahead and move that stitch marker. All right, this time for round 6, we're going to do 10 single crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Perfect. Move that stitch marker up. All right, round 7, we're going to do 2 single crochets, an increase, and then 2 more single crochets. 1, 2, increase, 1, 2, 1, 2, increase, 1, 2. All right, move the stitch marker up. All right, round 8, we're just going to do 12 single crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. All right, move the stitch marker. Round 9, we're going to do an increase and then 5 single crochets, and we're going to repeat that twice. So starting with our increase, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, increase again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Move the stitch marker up. All right, round 10 is going to be 14 single crochets. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Right, move the stitch marker up. Round 11, we're going to do 3 single crochets, an increase, and then 3 more single crochets. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, increase, 1, 2, 3. Move the stitch marker up. Round 12 is going to be 16 single crochets. And if at any point you want your axolotl tail to be shorter, you can stop anytime you want. Depends on just how long you want your tail to be. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Move the stitch marker up. All right, go ahead and slip stitch to finish it off. Again, you can totally keep going longer if you want to. You can go shorter. It's totally up to you and how you want your tail to look. All right. If you want to add a little bit of stuffing, you can kind of stuff the end of the tail a little bit, but I would leave this part by the body. I would leave it unstuffed, at least until you start to get it sewn on, and then you can kind of add stuffing. All right, set that aside. All right, we're gonna move on to the arms. We're going to do a magic ring alternative. We are going to do 10 single crochets in that second chain from hook. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then for the entire hand, we're just going to be doing 10 single crochets all the way around. So you can do it again as long or as short as you want, but you're just single crocheting all the way around, as many rounds as you want. So I'm not going to use a stitch marker, but you are more than welcome to. So again, you're just making sure you have 10 single crochets all the way around. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and just keep going until you feel like you've got a good length for the hand. right, and I'm doing about 6 or 7 rounds on my arms, but you can, again, totally do however many you want. When you get to the end of the arm, you can go ahead and stuff it a teeny bit if you want to, or you can leave it unstuffed. And then you're gonna fold it in half and you're gonna single crochet 5 across the top. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Go ahead and cut it off. And your first arm is done. All right, second axolotl arm, we're gonna do the same thing. So we're gonna create our magic ring alternative. And then we're gonna do 8 single crochet, or 10, sorry, single crochets in that second chain from hook. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. All right, and same thing, just 10 single crochets around, as many rounds as you want. I'm gonna make it the same length as this one, obviously, so that's 6 rounds, but you can do however many you want. All right, once you get it to that desired size, you can stuff it a little if you want to. If not, go ahead and single crochet 5 across the top, fold it in half. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, set it aside. Next, we're going to make the axolotl legs. So let's get started with our magic ring alternative. And then in that second chain from hook, we're going to do 12 single crochets. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. All right, so with the legs, same as the arms, we're just gonna do single crochets all the way around for a total of 12. And again, do it as long or as short as you want. All right, once you get it to that desired size, go ahead and add a little bit of stuffing if you would like to. Fold it in half and then single crochet 6 across the top. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, go ahead and repeat that process again. So start with that magic ring alternative. $12 single crochets in the second chain from hook. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then again, single crochet all the way around until you get that length that you want. Go ahead and stuff it if you want to. Then fold in half, 6 single crochets across the top. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right. Next, grab out your raspberry ice cream color yarn, and we are going to start on the gills. So for the gills, we're going to start by chaining 6. Three, 4, 5, 6. Then in that second chain from, starting in the second chain from hook, we're going to do 4 single crochets. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm actually going to do a 5th one as well. And then when you get to this spot, you're just going to kind of turn your work. So now working on the other side, we're going to start with an increase. And then go 1 single crochet, 2, 3, 4, and then finish it off with a slip stitch. And that is how you do the axolotl gills, and we're going to repeat that for a total of 6 gills. So chain 1, chain 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 4 single crochets, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then increase, on the other side, 1, 2, 3, 4, increase, and then slip stitch. And each gill might end up looking just a little bit different just based on how tight you do them. every time, so don't worry if they're not looking identical every single time. As long as they're about the same size, you should be fine. All right, chain 6 again. 3, 4, 5, 6. And then the 4 single crochets. So 1, 2, 3, 4, increase, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, increase, and slip stitch. Chain 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 4 singles, 1, 2, 3, 4, increase, one, 2, 3, 4, increase, and slip stitch. Chain 6, 3, 4, 5, 6, 4 singles, 1, 2, 3, 4, increase, one, 2, 3, 4, increase, slip stitch, and last one. chain 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 4 single crochets, 2, 3, 4, increase, 1, 2, 3, 4, increase, and slip stitch. Alright, now you have all 6 gills done and you're ready to assemble. Alright, now it's time to sew everything together on this little one. So I'm going to start with the arms and legs just to give them something to gauge where I put everything else. So we're going to grab the arms and the legs. I like to start with the arms because they have a more specific placement of where they go. So then I can kind of use them as a guide for everything else. But you can totally start with whatever part you want. And of course you can sew the parts on however you want. You don't have to copy what I'm doing. You can totally sew them on wherever you want to make your axolotl look how you want it to. So I'm going to be sewing them right along where the head and the body meet. So we're going to start this first arm. I'm going to start it with the edge of the arm right here in line with the eye. So I'm going to go ahead and just attach it to the body first with a stitch. Alright, and then you're just going to go through and sew it all the way on, making sure that it's nice and secure. Alright, make sure you go through every single crochet on the arm. And then when you get to the point that you want to wrap it up, I like to just take my yarn needle and thread it through and bring it out at some other spot on the body, just to kind of secure that thread in there so we don't have to worry about it falling out or anything. Go ahead and cut it off. Alright, and we're going to do that with the other arm as well. Again, we're going to line up the first spot where we're starting to sew it on. We're going to line it up with the eye. where the head and the body meet. Alright, then we're just sewing it on nice and tight. Again, making sure you go through every single crochet across the top. You can go through a couple times if you want them to be really secured on there. But then once you're done, go ahead and bring it out at some other part on the body, just to secure that yarn in there. Cut it off. And now you have both axolotl arms on. Now we're going to use that arm placement as a guide for where we want the legs to be. So grab the first leg. We're just going to tie it onto the yarn needle. Alright, so depending on where you want your legs, you can sew them obviously wherever you want. You're going to kind of sew it. There's a spot on the body where it starts to go back in, where it starts to decrease. That's where you're going to sew it. I think it's about around 27, 28 if you wanted to count. But again, just wherever you want to sew it, you can sew it. And I am going to sew mine pretty much right under the arms, maybe a little inwards more, just because. Alright, and you're going to do the exact same process that we did to sew the arms on. Should be a little easier because you're not dealing with a head in the way. Go ahead and kind of thread that yarn needle through a bit. When you're cutting it off, just make sure that you're really careful and you don't cut the body or the limbs, just cut the excess string. Alright, one leg on. Let's get the other one on. All right, once he has the arms and legs on, it's a little easier for them to sit up, obviously. So I'm gonna sew the gills on before I sew the tail. Sometimes once you sew the tail on, it gets a little harder for them to sit up and for you to be able to move it around to see where you place the gills. So I like to do the gill placement first, but you can do it in whatever order you would like. So go ahead and grab the first gill. And you'll notice on the gills, you'll have one end from where we started, and it'll just be the short one, and then you'll have the other long yarn tail. You'll be using the long yarn tail to sew it on. This one, we're just gonna kind of take our crochet hook, and we're just gonna kind of weave it into the piece a bit. So just kind of stick it through and just weave it through a couple of times, wrap it around the edge, whatever you feel like is best. And then once you've done it a couple of times around, you can go ahead and cut it off. That way you're just left with the one yarn tail, and that's what we're going to use to sew the gills on. We want to have a longer yarn tail so that we have more yarn to be able to fully manipulate the gills into the position that we want them to be, and so we can really secure them in there because they are not very big, they're not very sturdy, so we want to make sure they are nice and secure and they're not going to go flying out the second that you start moving the axolotl around. All right, so for the gill placement, obviously you have 6 gills, so what I like to kind of do is place one, like the middle one first, and then get that placed kind of at eye level or just below eye level, just depends on where you want it. And then obviously you'll do one above and one below, but I like to start in the middle just so that I have, again, kind of something to follow, a little bit of a guide. And then make sure you kind of place it in line with, like, make sure that it's fully on the side. It's not like super close over here. It's not in the back. So look at your axolotl from the top, align it. Go ahead and sew it on. So you're going to obviously start by just attaching it first. And then what I like to do is you're going to go through one of the sides of that middle yarn tail, and then go back into the head and come out on the other side of the gill, and then go back in through the other side of the gill that we haven't been in yet. Tie that on. So you're going to do a total of 3 stitches. And then once it's on a little, again, we're going to do the same thing, but this time we're going to make sure that when we thread our yarn in, we're not just sticking it randomly in the head. You're going to stick your yarn needle back in where you first attached the gill, and then you can pull it out wherever you want to. But that way it kind of helps the gill angle itself a little bit, going inwards instead of just sitting flat. Go ahead and cut it off. So now you have the first gill on one side. So here you can either choose to finish all the gills from one side and then match them up on the other side, or you can go like 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, or whatever order you want. So you can kind of choose, it's just up to you what you think is going to be easiest for you to line up all of the gills with each other, make it look just how you wanted to. So totally up to you. I am going to do all the gills on one side first, just so that I can kind of decide on the placement of everything and then just match it on the other side instead of just trying to decide every time. But that's just what I'm gonna do. Obviously, you can do whatever you want. All right. And every gill might look a little bit different. So if you wanted to, you can make sure that you're aligning. Like if you have two bigger gills than others, like you can make sure they're on like opposite sides. But it really doesn't matter. They should all be about the same size. If you do have bigger ones, you can always undo stitches or sew it on differently. But just align the gills however you want to, place them however you want to. It's your axolotl, so you get to decide what you want to do with it. All right, let's get this one on. I'm going to do the one up there first. So I want it to kind of sit right up at the top. You don't want it like super close to this gill. You want it to leave a little bit of a gap, not too big though. So we're going to go ahead and attach it first. So I like to go like 2 to 3 rows above that first, above the middle gill for the top one. All right, and we're going to do the same process that we did to sew our first gill on. I've just found that that makes it the most secure. That way you're not losing gills, because we don't want to lose these little guys. It'll look like you're going super close to this gill until you totally finish sewing the gill on, but all right, now you have the second one on. This is always the most tedious part, is just sewing all the gills on, because it does take a second. You can't just sew them on wherever you feel is best. You do have to kind of have some thought go into it. Alright, with these yarn tails that we're just kind of weaving around, just make sure that you are doing it in a way that makes them a little less obvious that they're there, and you're not just like making them super visible just because we want to try and not see those extra yarn tails. We just want to see the cute gills, so. All right, so for the third and last gill, again, we're gonna stick with that 2 to 3 rows below theme. So just that way they're all evenly placed, and we don't have to worry about the distance between them looking wacky or anything. Again, just make sure that they kind of stay in a line, or at least in a pattern. You're not just placing them because you feel like it. Make them look cute. This one gets hard because you have the arms that get in the way. You're trying to sew right where the arm wants to stand. So just do your best. It's a little tricky, but You just kind of have to hold your axolotl's hand a bit. All right, and when you're sewing the gills on, there's not really a right or a wrong side that needs to be facing the front. It's just kind of whatever side you feel looks best, because we did like rotate the piece, so, and it's just a chain. It's not like there's a right or a wrong side. So just whatever side you feel like looks best to you, maybe is the prettiest or is curling the right way. It's just up to you. All right. We have one side of gills done. This one likes to stand up a lot. Let's go ahead and do the other side. Now that we have one side done, we just have to match where they all are on the other side. So we don't really have to like debate whether that's a good placement or not. We just kind of have to match it. So super easy to get this part done. All right, so line it up with the eye and with this other one. Just kind of try and keep it on the same row. Look at where you place it on the other side. Especially look at how many stitches are in between the eye and the gill. That's how we're gonna base where to put it on the other side. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Perfect, right there. Whoops. All right, and on mine, that little yarn tail started coming undone, so I'm just gonna cut it a little bit. Perfect, and if you know how many stitches are in between each of your gills, you don't even have to really compare it to the other side to match up where you wanna put it. You just have to make sure you count that many stitches. And the gills will all be kind of funky at first because they're all they've got their own ideas in their head about what they want to do, and they're being sewn on weird. So you just kind of have to get them on there, and then once they're on, you can play with them and make sure that they're in the right placement, that they're making the right shapes, all that fun stuff. All right, so mine are 2 rows apart. So like I've got 2 rows fully visible in between, so one there and one there, So we're gonna go right here. And again, we're just keeping it in line with the other gill. All right, one last gill. All right, let's get this last gill on. Again, 2 rows in between. At least for mine. And on this gill, it looks like our yarn tail is a little bit off to the side. It's not really perfectly centered. So I'm not gonna sew it on as if it were centered. I'm gonna just treat it, you know, like it is, like it's off on the side a little bit, which is totally fine. It just means we're gonna go 2 stitches to the left instead of 1 on each side. But not a big deal at all. But I like to do 3 stitches for the gills just to get them on because I feel like that holds it the most sturdy and just keeps them looking the nicest. Go ahead and cut it off. All right, now we have all 6 gills on. So the last step is just to get that cute tail on. And a mouth. So there's the gills. Right now they'll look kind of crazy just because they're all still used to being, you just kind of have to manipulate them. They're all used to being just sitting there, so you just kind of have to play with them, get them where you want them, but they're on and they're cute. All right, let's get started on the tail. So for the tail, it's a little bit different sewing it on just because it's not, we didn't single crochet, like we didn't fold it in half and single crochet across the top like we did on the arms and legs. So it is just an open end to the tail. So it's gonna be a little bit different sewing it on. You can definitely add some stuffing to the end of the tail a little bit just to keep it, or just to make it so that it's a little more firm, a little easier. Kind of helps the axolotl stand up a bit more instead of being like flopping over. It'll kind of stand up. So we're just gonna add just a little stuffing. Mostly just at that tip of the tail. We don't really want to do it too much up here or else it'll be really awkward when we're sewing it on. So just fill it about 2/3 of the way full with stuffing if you like. All right. So I'm gonna put the bottom of the tail, it's gonna go on the same round as the top of the legs. That's where we're gonna kind of base it because that's where our axolotl is gonna be sitting. So go ahead and just look at what round we sewed it on, and then we're just gonna start right there. You can also go on the round just below it, just to kind of help even it out if you feel like the round with the legs looks too high up on the body. And then we're just gonna, holding it up like this, we're just gonna sew around in a circle. It's a little more challenging than sewing the flat pieces on, so if you need to go slow, definitely take your time getting it where you want it. I just like to use my left hand to hold the tail in place and then use my right hand, or I use my non-dominant hand to hold the tail in place while I use my dominant hand to sew it on. But I don't really move my non-dominant hand a ton. And I'm not really moving anything. I'm rotating the whole axolotl at the same time. That's just gonna help it sew on the most evenly and make sure that it's really in place. But do whatever is easiest for you. And again, you can sew it into whatever shape you want it. If you want it to be a little more narrow, you can do that as well. But I'm sewing mine on in a circle. Now the tail is quite large and it will take up most of the back of the axolotl body. So just be aware of that. Don't think that you made yours too big. It just is a very large tail because it's cute. So and if you notice it starts kind of going off to the sides or whatever, it might look like that at first when you're sewing it on, but I always say, unless it's like super off, just finish it, but don't cut the yarn yet. Just finish it, because then sometimes when you add more stitches, it manipulates it in different ways. So I don't like to get ahead of myself and just jump and just think, oh, it's off-centered, I'm gonna start redoing it right now. I like to finish the whole thing first and see what it looks like. Because who knows, maybe I'll end up liking it a little bit more where I ended up placing it. So, and just be careful when you're going in every single stitch. It will start to kind of pull really weird and tight. So you just kind of have to make sure that you're planning accordingly when you're sewing it, or go in every other stitch on the tail. Alright, make sure you finish it off nice and solid so that your tail is fully on there. I'm going to add one more stitch just in this back part, just so that it's really on there. Alright, bring it out somewhere else. Alright, now this last step that we're going to do on the axolotl is totally optional. It's more of just an embellishment on our little friend. It's less of a structural piece of him. But we're going to add a little dark pink stripe going up the tail right there. But you don't have to. If you like the way that this looks, totally leave it. But if you want to add this, it's super easy. You're just doing some single crochets. It's nothing complicated. So we're going to take our hook and we're going to insert it right at the tip of the tail. And we're just gonna bring a loop up. And then I like to grab both the yarn tail and the working yarn on the hook and pull them through and just pull up a loop with both. But then with the yarn tail, you're gonna pull it all the way through. So that way it comes out the other side, and that's gonna kind of create a knot that's gonna keep the yarn on. All right, and then we're just gonna go up the back of the tail. There's not really a great way to do this because there's not set stitches you're supposed to go in. So just kind of go wherever you feel like looks best and just shove that hook through. And you're just single crocheting up at the top of the tail. That's it. Super easy, but it looks super cute. Again, totally optional. It's not a required step to making the axolotl. It can be a little challenging just because you're having to hold the tail down, hold the axolotl down. So if it's a little hard for you to do, totally understandable, and just do what you can. You can modify it in any way. You can do double crochets, you could do whatever kind of stitch you want to get whatever kind of line you want right there. I'm just doing single crochets just for the sake of this video. All right, and we're gonna go all the way up to where the tail meets the body. And then we're not gonna go on the back at all. We're literally just going on the tail. I like to obviously do one like where the two of them meet, just to kind of blend it. And then I always do a slip stitch to finish it off, just because I think it helps it look a little neater, and then you make sure that you don't lose that stitching. So just add a little of this. And if it's a little crooked, it's not perfectly straight, it's totally fine. It'll straighten itself out. It's just because they're all trying to sit on that little spot on the tail. So, all right, and as you kind of manipulate your axolotl, move the stuffing around, it'll kind of be able to sit easier. But let's go ahead and tuck these yarn tails into the tail first so that we can finish off our axolotl. So I always tuck it in and then cut off the excess because there's quite a bit of excess here. I try not to leave too much, but you know, sometimes it just happens. All right, and there you have it. You have your very own Alexia the axolotl, and then obviously we'll just embroider that smile on there, but otherwise our little axolotl friend is done. Thank you for watching, and make sure to post your finished products and tag us at Okidoki's Crochet so I can see everything that you're doing, and we'll see you next time.